I still remember the exact moment my life changed forever. It was Tuesday morning, 9:15 a.m., and I was standing in the break room making coffee when I heard my boss Frida's voice echoing down the hallway. "Marcus is completely useless," she said to someone on the phone. "I don't know why we even keep him around. He's just taking up space." My hands froze around the coffee mug. She was talking about me. I'd worked at Pinnacle Marketing for 3 years, always getting good reviews, always meeting my deadlines. But Frida had made it clear from day one that she didn't like me. I quietly stepped closer to the door, my heart pounding. "Trust me," she continued, "I'm going to make his life so miserable that he quits. Then I can hire someone who actually knows what they're doing." The coffee mug slipped from my hands and crashed to the floor. Frida went silent. I quickly cleaned up the mess, but the damage was done. She knew I'd heard everything. That afternoon, the real nightmare began. Frida started her campaign against me immediately. First, she moved my desk to the worst spot in the office, right next to the noisy printer and the bathroom. When I asked why, she just smiled and said, "You'll get used to it." Then came the impossible deadlines. She'd give me projects on Friday afternoon that will do Monday morning. Projects that normally takes a week, she wanted it done over the weekend. When I'd work all weekend and turn them in on time, she'd find tiny mistakes and make me redo everything. The worst part was how she treated me in meetings. She'd interrupt me mid-sentence, dismiss my ideas without listening, and sometimes act like I wasn't even there. Other coworkers started avoiding me, afraid they'd get on her bad side too. One day, she assigned me to organize her entire filing system. I spent 2 days sorting everything perfectly. When I finished, she walked over, knocked half the files onto the floor, and said, "This is all wrong. Start over again." I watched the papers scatter across the carpet and felt something snap inside me. But I just nodded and said, "Yes, ma'am." After 6 months of pure torture, I was ready to quit. I'd been updating my resume and looking for other jobs every night. But then something unexpected happened that changed everything. I was working late again, trying to finish another impossible project, when I accidentally opened the wrong folder on the shared drive. Inside were dozens of expenses reports, all with Frida's name on them. Curious, I clicked on one. My eyes widened. Frida had been charging personal expenses to the company. Expensive dinners at fancy restaurants, weekend trips to luxury hotels, even shopping sprees at designer stores. She'd been stealing thousands of dollars from Pinnacle Marketing. I quickly took screenshots of everything, my hands shaking with excitement and fear. This was it. This was how I could finally fight back. But I had to be smart about it. If I moved too fast, she'd find a way to destroy the evidence and probably get me fired for snooping. I saved everything to a secure folder on my personal laptop and started planning my next move. Frida thought she had all the power, but she had no idea what was coming. The next morning, Frida was in an especially bad mood. She called me into her office and slammed a report down on her desk. "This is garbage," she said, even though I'd worked on it for 3 days straight. I want it completely rewritten by noon. I looked at the clock. It was already 10:30 a.m. "Ma'am, that's physically impossible. This report is 50 pages long." Her face turned red. "Are you questioning me, Marcus? Because if you can't handle the workload, maybe you should find another job." "No ma'am," I said quietly. "I'll do my best." She leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smirk. "Good. And when you inevitably fail to meet the deadline, we'll need to have a serious conversation about your future here." I walked back to my desk, but instead of panicking, I felt oddly calm. Frida was making this too easy. Every unreasonable demand, every public humiliations was just building my case. I started documenting everything, dates, times, witnesses, emails. By lunch, I had a detailed log of 6 months of workplace harassment. Combined with the expense fraud, Frida was digging her own grave. I spent my lunch break researching employment lawyers and company policies. Pinnacle Marketing had strict rules about expense fraud and workplace harassment. They also had a whistleblower protection policy that I'd never paid attention to before. The key was timing. I needed to gather more evidence and find the right moment to strike. Frida was smart and well-connected in the company. If I make my move too early, she might find a way to turn everything around on me. That afternoon, she gave me another impossible task. I need you to redesign our entire client presentation system by Thursday, she said. The CEO wants to see it. I knew she was lying. The CEO hadn't asked for anything like that. She was just trying to set me up for another failure. But I played along, working late into the night, documenting every unreasonable demand. Meanwhile, I kept digging into those expense reports. The more I found, the angrier I got. Frida was living like a queen on the company's money while making my life miserable. She'd stolen over $30,000 in the past year alone. Soon, she will pay for every cruel word, every impossible deadline, every humiliating moment. 2 weeks later, Frida made her biggest mistake yet. During our weekly team meeting, she decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. Marcus, she announced, since you clearly can't handle your current responsibilities, I'm reassigning the Morrison account to Jennifer. The Morrison account was my biggest client. I'd spent 8 months building that relationship, and it was finally starting to pay off. Jennifer looked uncomfortable as all eyes turned to me. Ma'am, is there a specific reason for the change? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Frida's smile was ice cold. You're just not Morrison material, Marcus. Some people have what it takes, and others, she shrugged, letting the insult hang in the air. The room was dead silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, some sympathetic, others just glad they weren't in my shoes. I nodded calmly and said, I understand. I'll transfer all my files to Jennifer today. But inside, I was celebrating. Frida had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Taking away my biggest account without cause was clear retaliation, and I had a room full of witnesses. That night, I made my final preparations. I scheduled a meeting with HR for Friday morning. In my email, I simply said I needed to discuss some workplace concerns with supporting documentation. I didn't mention Frida's name or give any details. I wanted the element of surprise. Thursday night, I organized all my evidence into a neat presentation. Screenshots of the expense fraud, detailed logs of harassment, witness accounts, and company policy violations. Everything was documented and cross-referenced. I even included audio recordings from my phone when Frida had been particularly cruel. The presentation was 63 pages long. Frida had given me plenty of material to work with. I barely slept that night. Part of me was excited, but another part was terrified. Frida had friends in high places. She'd been with the company for 18 years and had a reputation as a top performer. Meanwhile, I was just a junior account manager who'd been struggling under her leadership. But the evidence was overwhelming. Even if Frida tried to fight back, the numbers didn't lie. She'd stolen company money and created a hostile work environment. There was no way she could explain that away. Friday morning arrived, and I walked into the office with a briefcase full of ammunition. The HR meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my best suit and carrying a thick folder. Sarah Chen, the HR director, greeted me with a professional smile. She had no idea what was about to hit her. Thanks for meeting with me, Sarah, I said, setting my folder on the conference table. I have some serious concerns about workplace harassment and potential fraud that I need to report. Her expression changed immediately. Fraud? She repeated. I opened my folder and began laying out the evidence. First, I showed her the expenses reports. Sarah's eyes widened as she saw the amounts and the obviously personal nature of the charges. Hotel stays in Miami during weekends, expensive dinners with no business purpose, shopping sprees at luxury stores. This is just from the past 6 months, I explained. I estimate Frida has stolen over $30,000 from the company in the past year. Sarah was taking notes furiously. How did you discover this? Accidentally, I said. I was looking for project files and opened the wrong folder. Once I saw what was there, I felt obligated to investigate further. Then I showed her the harassment documentation. Every cruel comment, every impossible deadline, every public humiliation, all carefully documented with dates and witnesses. Sarah's face grew more serious with each page she reviewed. Marcus, this is extremely concerning. Are you willing to provide a formal statement? Absolutely, I said. I have witnesses who can corroborate the harassment, and the expense fraud speaks for itself. She closed the folder and looked at me directly. I need to be clear about something. Making accusations against a senior manager is serious business. If we investigate and can't substantiate these claims, it could impact your career here. I'd expected this warning. I understand the risks, Sarah. But I also understand that fraud and harassment are serious crimes. I have a duty to report what I've discovered. She nodded slowly. Okay. I'm going to need to escalate this immediately. Can you make yourself available this afternoon for follow-up questions? Of course. And Marcus? Until we complete our investigation, I need you to keep this completely confidential. Don't discuss it with anyone, including Frida. I promised to stay quiet, but inside I was grinning. Frida had no idea that her perfect little empire was about to come crashing down. She probably thought I was just another weak employee she'd successfully bullied into submission. She was about to learn how wrong she was. By lunch, word had spread through the executive offices that something big was happening. I could see people whispering in groups and glancing toward Frida's office. She seemed oblivious, probably planning her next move to make my life even more miserable. Around 2 p.m., I saw 2 men in expensive suits enter the building. They went straight to the elevator without checking in at reception. Corporate investigators, I realized. My report had triggered a full-scale investigation. Frida was called into a meeting at 3 p.m. I watched from my desk as she walked confidently down the hallway, probably thinking it was about some new project or promotion. She had no idea she was walking into an ambush. 20 minutes later, she came back looking pale and shaken. Her confident stride was gone, replaced by quick, nervous steps. She grabbed some personal items from her desk and left without saying goodbye to anyone. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thanks for your cooperation today. We'll be in touch soon. S. Chen. I deleted the text and went back to work, trying to act normal. But inside, I was buzzing with excitement. Phase 1 was complete. Frida didn't come to work the next day. Or the day after that. Rumors started flying around the office. Some people said she was sick, others thought she was on vacation. A few suspected something more serious was happening. On Wednesday, Sarah Chen called me into another meeting. This time, she wasn't alone. The company's general counsel, David Rodriguez, was sitting beside her with a thick legal pad. Marcus, Sarah began, our investigation has confirmed several of your allegations. Frida Martinez has been placed on administrative leave pending the completion of our inquiry. My heart jumped, but I kept my expression neutral. I see. David leaned forward. We've also discovered additional irregularities that extend beyond what you initially reported. The expense fraud appears to be more extensive than we first thought. How much more extensive? I asked. Sarah and David exchanged glances. We can't share specific details, but let's just say your $30,000 estimate was conservative. I tried to look surprised, even though I'd suspected Frida had been stealing for years. What happens next? We'll be conducting interviews with other employees over the next few days, David explained. We may need to speak with you again as our key witness. Whatever you need, I said. As I left the meeting, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Frida's reign of terror was finally over. The investigation moved quickly. Over the next week, investigators interviewed dozens of employees. People who had been too scared to speak up before suddenly found their voices. Stories emerged about Frida's bullying, her favoritism, her complete disregard for company policies. I learned that I wasn't her only victim. Jennifer, the woman who'd gotten my Morrison account, came forward with her own horror stories. So did Mark from accounting, and Linda from customer service. Frida had created a culture of fear throughout the entire department. But the expense fraud was the smoking gun. Investigators found evidence going back 3 years. Frida had stolen over $80,000 from Pinnacle Marketing. She'd been living like a celebrity on the company's money while terrorizing her employees. On Friday afternoon, Sarah Chin sent an email to the entire department. Please be advised that Frida Martinez is no longer employed by Pinnacle Marketing. During the transition period, the department will report directly to Regional Manager Tom Bradley. The email was carefully worded, but everyone knew what it meant. Frida had been fired. The witch was dead. That evening, my co-workers and I went out for drinks to celebrate. For the first time in months, people were laughing and relaxing. The cloud of fear that had hung over our department was finally lifting. Monday morning felt like the first day of a new life. I walked into the office with my head held high, no longer dreading what cruel surprise Frida might have in store for me. Her office stood empty, the blinds closed, her nameplate already removed from the door. Tom Bradley, our new interim manager, called a department meeting at 10 a.m. He was everything Frida wasn't: calm, respectful, and actually interested in hearing our ideas. I know the past few months have been challenging, he said. My goal is to create a positive work environment where everyone can succeed. If you have concerns or suggestions, my door is always open. After the meeting, Tom pulled me aside. Marcus, I've reviewed your personnel file. Despite some recent challenges, your work has been consistently excellent. I'd like to discuss some new opportunities with you. My heart raced. What kind of opportunities? Well, we need someone to take over Frida's client portfolio temporarily. You have the most experience with our major accounts, and your Morrison client specifically requested to work with you again. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd be honored to help however I can. Great. Let's talk more this afternoon. As I walked back to my desk, I passed Frida's empty office and smiled. Justice was sweet. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my expanded role. Without Frida's constant interference and impossible demands, I was finally able to show what I could really do. My client presentations improved, my project completion rate soared, and I started bringing in new business. The Morrison account, which Frida had tried to take away from me, signed a massive contract extension. Other clients started requesting me specifically for their projects. Tom Bradley noticed my success and began giving me more responsibility. Meanwhile, news about Frida's fraud case spread through the industry. She'd been arrested and charged with embezzlement. The local business journal ran a story about the scandal, calling it one of the largest cases of corporate theft in the region's recent history. I felt bad for about 30 seconds. Then I remembered all the nights I'd worked until midnight on her impossible projects, all the public humiliations, all the times she'd made me question my own abilities. Frida had made her own choices. She'd chosen to steal from the company and terrorize her employees. Now she was facing the consequences. I was just the messenger who'd brought those consequences to light. 2 months after Frida's departure, Tom Bradley called me into his office for a private meeting. I'd been hoping for this conversation, but I tried to keep my expectations realistic. Marcus, he began, I've been watching your performance since taking over this department, and I'm impressed. You've exceeded every goal we've set, your clients love working with you, and you've brought in more new business than anyone else on the team. I tried to stay humble. Thank you, sir. I've really enjoyed the increased responsibility. Well, that brings me to why I asked you here. Upper management has decided to make some permanent changes to our department structure. We're eliminating the middle management position that Frida held and creating a new senior account director role instead. My heart started pounding. That sounds like a great opportunity for someone. Tom smiled. We'd like that someone to be you, Marcus. The position comes with a 40% salary increase, your own office, and direct oversight of our 3 largest client accounts. I was speechless. 6 months ago, Frida had been trying to drive me out of the company. Now I was being offered a promotion that would put me 2 levels above my old position. I don't know what to say, I stammered. Say yes, Tom laughed. You've earned it. The irony wasn't lost on me. The office they were giving me was Frida's old office. The same space where she'd called me into so many humiliating meetings was about to become my workspace. I spent the weekend cleaning out her remaining belongings and redecorating. Where Frida had hung awards and certificates highlighting her achievements, I put up photos of my successful client projects. Where she'd kept expensive decorations bought with stolen company money, I placed simple, professional items I'd purchased myself. Monday morning, I sat behind Frida's old desk and felt a surge of satisfaction. The nameplate on the door now read, Marcus Thompson, Senior Account Director. The view from the corner office was beautiful, I could see the entire city skyline. My first meeting as a senior director was with the Morrison account, the client Frida had tried to take away from me. They were thrilled to be working with me officially and signed another major contract extension on the spot. As I reviewed the paperwork, I thought about how differently things might have turned out. If I'd quit like Frida wanted, if I'd never found those expense reports, if I'd been too scared to report what I'd discovered. But I hadn't quit. I'd fought back. And now I was sitting in her chair, managing her accounts, living the professional life she'd tried to destroy. News of my promotion spread quickly through the company. Most of my coworkers were genuinely happy for me, they'd seen how Frida treated me and knew I deserved better. A few seemed surprised that the quiet guy Frida had been bullying was now running the department. Jennifer, who'd briefly inherited my Morrison account, stopped by my office to congratulate me. I always knew you were capable of more, she said. Frida was just too threatened by your talent to let you shine. I appreciate that, I replied. I'm looking forward to building a better team culture here. And I meant it. I remembered how it felt to be powerless, to dread coming to work every day, to have my confidence slowly destroyed by someone who was supposed to be mentoring me. I never wanted anyone else to go through that experience. Over the next few weeks, I implemented new policies for our department. Regular one-on-one meetings with team members, transparent project assignments, and an open-door policy for concerns or suggestions. Everything Frida had refused to do. The change in morale was immediate and dramatic. People started volunteering for challenging projects instead of hiding from them. Collaboration increased, and our client satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. 3 months into my new role, I got an unexpected email from Frida's personal account. The subject line read, "I owe you an apology." My first instinct was to delete it, but curiosity got the better of me. Marcus, the email began, I know you probably never want to hear from me again, but I need to say this. I was wrong to treat you the way I did. I was insecure about my own position and took it out on you instead of dealing with my problems appropriately. She went on to explain that she was in therapy, working on anger management, and facing the legal consequences of her fraud. She didn't make excuses for her behavior, just acknowledged that she'd been wrong. I don't expect forgiveness, she concluded, but I wanted you to know that you deserved better, and I'm sorry I didn't give it to you. I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me felt vindicated, she was finally admitting what I'd known all along. But another part felt sad for her. Frida had thrown away her career and freedom because she couldn't handle her own insecurities. I drafted a brief response, "Thank you for the apology. I hope you find the help you need." Then I moved her email to my archive folder and went back to work. 6 months after taking over Frida's role, I was asked to present our department's performance to the executive board. It was the same conference room where Frida used to humiliate me in meetings, but now I was the one standing at the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "I'm pleased to report that our department has exceeded all targets for client retention, new business development, and employee satisfaction." I clicked through slides showing our improved metrics. Client complaints were down 78%. New business was up 45%. Employee turnover had dropped to 0, we hadn't lost a single team member since Frida's departure. The CEO, Patricia Williams, nodded approvingly. "These are impressive results, Marcus. What do you attribute the turnaround to?" "Leadership change, ma'am. When employees feel supported instead of threatened, they perform at their highest level." Several board members exchanged knowing glances. Everyone knew about Frida's fraud case and the investigation that had revealed her toxic management style. "Well," Patricia said, "it's clear that promoting you was the right decision. Keep up the excellent work." As I packed up my presentation materials, I thought about how far I'd come. A year ago, I was ready to quit. Now I was presenting to the board and receiving praise from the CEO. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at the same expensive restaurant where Frida used to charge personal meals to the company. The irony felt perfect, I was paying with my own money, money I'd earned honestly through hard work and merit. As I reviewed the menu, I reflected on everything that had happened. Frida's harassment had been horrible to endure, but it had also revealed my own strength. I'd learned that I could stand up for myself, that I could fight back against injustice, that I had more courage than I'd ever realized. The expense fraud discovery had been pure luck, but what I'd done with that information was a choice. I could have ignored it, could have just looked for another job and left quietly. Instead, I'd chosen to fight. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom Bradley, "Saw the board presentation. Outstanding work. Patricia wants to discuss your long-term career path next week." I smiled and ordered the most expensive steak on the menu. 6 months ago, I couldn't afford anything but the cheapest meals. Now I was being courted for executive positions and making more money than I'd ever dreamed of. Frida had tried to destroy my career. Instead, she'd accidentally launched it into the stratosphere. The following week, Patricia Williams called me into her office for a private meeting. Her corner suite was twice the size of my office, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's financial district. "Marcus," she said, "I've been watching your progress since the management changes in your department. Your turnaround has been remarkable." "Thank you, ma'am. I've had great support from Tom and the rest of the team." She leaned forward. "I'm going to be direct with you. We're planning to expand our operations into 3 new markets next year. We need someone to head up that expansion, someone with your combination of client skills and leadership ability." My heart raced. That sounds like an incredible opportunity. It would mean relocating to our Atlanta office, overseeing a team of 50 people, and building our presence throughout the Southeast. It's a big job with big responsibilities, and big rewards. She slid a folder across her desk. Inside was a job description for Regional Vice President, Southeast Operations. The salary was double what I was currently making. "Take the weekend to think about it," Patricia said. "But I hope you'll say yes. You've proven that you can turn around struggling situations and build high-performing teams." I walked back to my office in a daze. A vice president position at 32 years old. It was beyond my wildest dreams. That weekend, I drove past my old apartment, the cramped one-bedroom place I'd rented when Frida was making my life miserable. I'd upgraded to a much nicer place since my promotion, but seeing the old building brought back memories of those dark months. I remembered lying awake at night, wondering if Frida was right about me. Maybe I really was useless. Maybe I didn't belong in the corporate world. Maybe I should just give up and find some dead-end job where no one would expect much from me. Those doubts seemed ridiculous now. I'd not only survived Frida's campaign of harassment, I'd emerged stronger than ever. The skills I'd developed while defending myself, documentation, strategic thinking, patience, courage, had made me a better leader. Monday morning, I walked into Patricia's office with my answer. "I accept," I said simply. She smiled and stood up to shake my hand. "Excellent. We'll announce your appointment next week." "Congratulations, Marcus. You've earned this." As I left her office, I passed the conference room where Frida used to humiliate me in front of other employees. Soon, I'd be running meetings in conference rooms across 3 states, leading teams, making decisions that affected thousands of people. Frida had tried to make me quit. Instead, she'd made me stronger. The announcement of my promotion made waves throughout the company. People who'd witnessed Frida's harassment campaign were amazed at how far I'd risen. Some of Frida's old allies, who'd stayed quiet during her reign of terror, suddenly wanted to be my friend. But the most satisfying moment came when I cleaned out my old desk for the last time. Buried in the bottom drawer, I found a folder Frida had given me during one of her harassment sessions. It contained a performance improvement plan she'd written, full of impossible goals and vague criticisms. The plan was dated 6 months ago, right around the time I'd overheard her phone conversation about making my life miserable. Looking at it now, I could see her strategy clearly: create an official paper trail of poor performance to justify firing me. She'd been so confident in her plan. So sure that she could break me down and drive me away. The performance improvement plan was supposed to be my professional death sentence. Instead, it became evidence of her harassment campaign, helping to seal her fate during the investigation. I tore up the document and threw it in the trash. Then I packed my personal items into a box marked Regional VP, Atlanta office, and walked toward my future. On my last day at the main office, my former coworkers threw me a farewell party. It was held in the same conference room where Frida used to conduct her reign of terror, but now it was filled with laughter, congratulations, and genuine friendship. Tom Bradley gave a speech about leadership and perseverance. "Marcus showed us that you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be the most effective leader," he said. "Sometimes the quiet ones have the most strength." Jennifer presented me with a photo album filled with pictures from successful client projects we'd worked on together. "Remember us little people when you're running the Southeast region," she joked. As the party wound down, I stood at the window looking out at the city skyline. A year ago, I'd been standing in this same spot, broken down and ready to quit. Frida had controlled my daily schedule, my workload, my confidence, even my sense of self-worth. Now I was about to take charge of a multi-million-dollar expansion, overseeing operations across 3 states. The scared, helpless employee Frida had tormented was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't getting Frida fired. It was becoming everything she tried to prevent me from becoming. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new corner office in Atlanta, reviewing quarterly reports from my Southeast region. We'd exceeded all targets, opened 2 new locations ahead of schedule, and built a team culture based on respect and collaboration. My assistant knocked and entered with a stack of industry magazines. "These just arrived, Mr. Thompson," she said, setting them on my desk. I flipped through the top magazine and stopped at an article titled, "Rising Stars in Regional Management." There, on page 12, was my photo and a 2-page feature about our Southeast expansion success. The article mentioned my rapid rise from account manager to regional vice president and praised my innovative approach to team leadership. It quoted Patricia Williams saying, "Marcus Thompson represents the future of our industry, someone who combines analytical skills with genuine people leadership." There was no mention of Frida, no reference to the harassment or the fraud case. That chapter of my life was over, relegated to the past where it belonged. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Frida had made my life hell for 8 months. In return, I'd taken her job, her office, her clients, and her career trajectory. But more importantly, I'd proven to myself that I could overcome anything. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to stay down when someone tries to destroy you. Sometimes it's rising so far above them that they become irrelevant to your story. Frida had wanted to make me disappear. Instead, she'd made me unstoppable.